Hi girls and welcome back to Form 2 Integrated Science. Right, so last class we would have continued looking at the circulatory system and we focused on the heart. We focused on movement of blood through the heart in the four chambers of the heart and the movement of oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. Today we are going to focus on arteries, veins and capillaries. Right, we will be learning how to relate the main parts of the circulatory system to its functions in the body and to identify the differences between arteries, veins and capillaries. So arteries, veins and capillaries firstly are not the same, right? So arteries have a very specific and special function. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. So anytime we are talking about blood, being moved away from the heart, then that blood is going to be moving via an artery. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. Extremely important to take note of. Right? So they carry blood away from the heart. Veins, however, carry blood to the heart. So if we go back to the structure of the heart, right, and we have blood here that is leaving the heart. What type of vessel is that? So these two here, both of these vessels here are carrying blood away from the heart. So if we look at it, arteries carry blood away from the heart. So these two vessels here are arteries. And veins, they carry blood towards the heart. So these are going to be veins. Once you have it coming to the heart, it is going to be a vein. So all of these are veins. Once it is carrying blood away from the heart, it is going to be an artery. So most arteries will carry oxygenated blood with the exception of the pulmonary artery, and most veins carry deoxygenated blood with the exception of the pulmonary vein. So we will get to those a little bit later on. So we are going to look at the structure of an artery and the structure of a vein. So if we look at them, both of them have a outer wall. So with your artery, your outer wall is very thick as compared to your vein, the outer wall is thin. The portion where blood will actually be flowing, or the inner diameter, is very narrow in an artery, and in a vein the diameter is very large. Right? So veins will have a thinner outside and a wider inner core, whereas your arteries are going to have a thick outer wall around it, and it's also going to have a narrower passageway in order for blood to flow. There's a thick layer of muscle and elastic fibers in your artery, whereas in the vein there's a thin layer of muscle and elastic fibers, and those are structured in such a way to help with their function. Right? So arteries have thick walls that include a thick layer of muscle, and that is because it needs to withstand high pressures of blood leaving the heart. Because remember, your heart pumps blood around your entire body. So the power that blood is going to be leaving the heart with is going to be very strong. Right? So because arteries will carry blood away from the heart, they need to be able to withstand that pressure without bursting. So you will have the walls being very thick and the diameters being very thin, so that when the blood passes through there, the vessels are strong enough to withstand that high pressure. Inside the diameter, alright, so the inside diameter is also known as the lumen of an artery, is relatively small. The blood flow is at high pressure, so valves are not needed and there is no chance of backflow. So in an artery, we don't have something called valves, right? Whereas veins are going to have that, right? So you don't have a valve because it's only one direction that the blood is going to flow because of that high pressure. So let's look at veins now. So veins have thinner walls and they contain much less muscle, as the blood pressure inside of a vein is much less as opposed to an artery. Inside the diameter, the inside diameter or lumen is much wider than that of an artery. Again, because it's less pressure the blood is going to be passing through it, you need to have a wide enough region for the blood to be able to flow quickly. The blood flowing through veins does not have the benefit of high pressure created by the pumping heart. Instead, it relies on being squeezed through the veins as a result of muscle action. In order to prevent blood from flowing backwards, long veins, such as those in the arms and legs, have valves that only allow blood to flow in one direction. So valves are not present in arteries, but they are present in specifically long veins. Right? Because we don't have the high pressures that the heart will provide, the blood is being moved by the squeezing of the veins. So you don't want blood flowing backwards, you want it to go in a specific direction. So the valves will prevent that. Right? So this is a diagram of an artery and how it splits up into smaller ones known as arterioles. And on the right, we have a drawing of a vein. So when the valve is open, blood is able to flow. You have your wall of your vein is being squeezed by the muscle to push the blood, and if blood flows back, it is prevented from going backwards. Right? It will fill the pockets, closing the valve. Now we're going to look at capillaries. So capillaries are extremely thin, right? So we have arteries being the biggest, followed by veins, and now capillaries. So arteries and veins are ideal for transporting blood from one part of the body to another, but their walls are far too thick for substances to diffuse into and out of them. So remember, both of them have fairly thick outer walls, right? So, and diffusion is based on how thick something is. The thicker the wall, the more difficult diffusion will be happening, right? So you want very thin walls in order for diffusion to happen, right? Because remember, blood, when it's being transported, we want to have an exchange of nutrients, you want to have an exchange of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and in order for that to happen, the walls need to be thin. But you cannot have capillaries directly connected to your heart as main vessels because they are far too weak to withstand that high blood pressure. So arteries subdivide many times, first forming arterioles. That is what this diagram would have showed you. Now those arterioles will eventually further divide to form a network known as blood capillaries, so that every cell is supplied with blood. Blood capillaries are much thinner than human hair. So can you imagine how thin that is? A strand of your hair is very thin as is, and capillaries are even thinner than that. And their walls are only one cell thick. Being one cell thick makes it ideal for diffusion to happen. This allows substances such as oxygen and glucose to diffuse out into the cells, while at the same time, waste products such as carbon dioxide and urea diffuse out of the cells. As the blood flows through the capillaries, it provides the substances that the cells require. The capillaries leaving the cells join together to form slightly larger blood vessels called venules, which then combine to become veins, carrying the blood back to the heart. So the artery that connects the heart with the lungs is the only artery in the body that carries deoxygenated blood and it is called the pulmonary artery. It is very important that you know what is the pulmonary artery. On this side here is a definition of arteries, veins, lumen, arterioles, and capillaries. Please take note of it into your notebooks. These are definitions that you need to know for your entire time in the study of integrated science. So as part of your homework for today, I would like you all to answer question 1, which is at the bottom of page 45. Right, so this is page 45 in your textbook. You are going to answer question 1, part A, B, and C. Now let us look briefly at the components of blood. So blood consists of a liquid part called plasma, right? Earlier on I would have showed you all a diagram where blood can be separated into plasma and the red pigment hemoglobin, and a solid part made up of mostly blood cells. Plasma is about 90% water, but it also contains some important substances, including nutrients obtained by the digestion of food, which needs to be taken to the cells of the body. It also contains waste products such as urea, which will eventually be excreted from the body. It contains blood proteins known as antibodies. So I'm sure you all are hearing a lot about antibodies now with the COVID-19 pandemic, and that we need to build our antibodies against the COVID-19 virus, right? So antibodies are transported in our blood, right? So it contains blood proteins such as antibodies, which help protect the body from disease, and something known as fibrinogen, which helps the blood to clot. Fibrinogen is very important because think about it, if you get a cut, you do not want to just stay there and bleed out, right? So fibrinogen being present in your blood is what helps the blood to clot so that it will stop leaking out of your body. It also contains hormones that coordinate different functions within the body. The mass of blood cells contains a mixture of both red and white blood cells. So we have different types of white blood cells. There are phagocytes and lymphocytes, and these are the red blood cells, which are disc shaped. So can you see they look like a little disc, a little CD disc, a CD, if you all know, remember what a CD disc looks like, right? Each with vital roles in our well-being. It also contains platelets. Platelets look like the fragments of red blood cells, and they are essential for the clotting process, right? So when you hear your platelet level is low, you need to get that checked out, because then if you get a cut, it means you are going to take longer for your blood to clot. So we're going to look at some of the differences now between red blood cells and white blood cells. So red blood cells transport oxygen around the body, whereas white blood cells, they are there to fight infections that take place in the body. Red blood cells, they contain the pigment hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is what gives red blood cells that red color, right? So it gives it that red pigment. So it's called hemoglobin, and hemoglobin contains iron. A shortage of red blood cells causes anemia. So if anybody is anemic, they would be recommended to take iron supplements, right? A condition that may be due to insufficient iron in the diet. So you must eat enough foods that are rich in iron, such as green leafy vegetables. So eat your bhaji, eat your pak choy, eat your kale, eat your spinach. All of those green leafy vegetables are rich in iron, and having enough iron in your diet will help prevent anemia. Now, there are some people whose body just cannot process the iron properly, and they need to take iron supplements. That is different, right? We already talked about there are two different types of white blood cells known as phagocytes and lymphocytes, and these fight infections. So phagocytes enclose bacteria, or parts of the bacteria into the cell and digest and kill them. So think about if you have this little blob like slime, right? And then I don't know if you all ever played with slime, right? So you have that slime, and if you put anything into it, I know kids now like to put like little beads or little balls or little substances into it, and you enclose it and wrap it up inside of it. That is what the phagocytes do. So they basically eat the bacteria, and that is how they will kill them. Lymphocytes, however, they release chemicals known as antibodies, right? And that is what will destroy bacteria. Right, and you can read up on donation of blood, and it's a very good thing to do. And again, you all will take note of the key terms on the right hand side, because that gives you the definitions for each of those. So we are going to stop there for today, and you all can take a read through the Check Your Understanding on the bottom of page 47, and you will get to see some of the different types of blood cells. I am also attaching a YouTube video for you all to look at on blood. So please look at those, and we will continue in our next session, which will be on Monday morning. Right, so Monday morning will be another asynchronous class, and I will do a live session with you all on day 7.